The alarms on Luna Base screamed to life at exactly 3 in the morning. Commander Laura was already awake, staring at reports from deep space sensors when the first signals came through. She rushed to the command center where Lieutenant Marsh sat hunched over his console with wide eyes. 17 vessels just dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter, Marsh said without looking up. They are broadcasting on every frequency we can detect. Leaned over his shoulder and watched the data scroll across the screen. The ships were large but clearly damaged. Some of them trailed debris and leaked atmosphere into the void. Whatever these visitors were, they had not come looking for a fight. They had come running from one. "Can you translate their signal?" she asked. Marsh nodded slowly. "The computer is working on it now. Their language structure is surprisingly simple. They want us to understand them." The translation appeared on the main display moments later. Read it aloud to the room full of officers who had gathered behind her. "We are the last of our kind. Our world is ash. Our people are dying. We come not as conquerors but as beggars, please. We have nowhere else to go." The command center fell silent, felt the weight of every pair of eyes on her back. She was the ranking officer on Luna Base and the leader of the first contact response team. Whatever happened next would be her decision. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Let them know we hear them." Admiral George Parry appeared on a separate screen within minutes, his face grim and tired. He commanded the United Earth Defense Command from his headquarters in Geneva, and he did not look pleased about being woken up. "What exactly are you doing?" he demanded. "My job, Admiral. We have refugees requesting asylum. I'm responding to their distress call." Parry shook his head. "We do not know anything about them. They could be the forward wave of an invasion force." "Look at their ships, sir. They are falling apart. Half of them will not survive another jump through hyperspace. These are not invaders. These are survivors." The argument continued for nearly an hour while the alien fleet drifted closer to Earth. Brought in Dr. the chief medical officer, who explained that she was already preparing her teams to receive wounded aliens if needed. Marsh continued working on translations and soon established a basic two-way communication with the lead vessel. The alien who appeared on screen was tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Deep lines of exhaustion and grief marked its face. It identified itself as Aura, the elder speaker of the people. "We have traveled very far," Aura said in a voice that the computer translated as soft and weary. "The Dominion have found our world and decided they wanted it. When we refused to surrender our freedom, they burned everything. 80,000 of us escaped. We are all that remain of a civilization that once numbered in the billions." Felt her chest tighten. She had seen footage of human refugees throughout history, the boats crossing dangerous seas, the long lines of families walking toward uncertain futures, the faces of children who did not understand why their homes were gone. This was the same thing, just on a scale that made her head spin. "Why did you come here?" she asked gently. "Earth is not exactly on the main routes of galactic travel." Aura made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. "We came because of the stories. Every species in the galaxy knows about your world. They call it a death world. They say the gravity crushes bones, the atmosphere burns lungs, and the creatures that live there are monsters born from nightmare. No one comes to Earth because no one wants to die." "Then why are you here?" "Because they will follow us. They always follow. They will not stop until every last is dead. We thought perhaps the only thing that might stop them is something they fear even more than their own hunger for conquest." Aura paused and looked directly into the camera. "We came hoping that the legendary might protect us." Admiral Parry finally gave his approval for the refugees to approach Earth orbit after promise to keep the defense grid on standby. The damaged ships limped toward the orbital stations, where human crews waited to help them dock. And her medical teams worked through the night treating injuries and illnesses that human doctors had never seen before. Personally greeted Aura when the elder speaker came aboard Luna Base. The towered over her but moved carefully as if the lunar gravity might break something fragile inside. Up close, could see the scars on the alien's arms and the way Aura flinched at sudden movements. "Thank you," Aura whispered. "We did not know if you would help us. We did not know if the stories about being savage killers were true." Smiled and offered her hand. They stared at it for a moment before understanding the gesture and gently taking it. The alien's fingers were cold and trembling. "We are not killers," said. "Well, not unless someone gives us a very good reason." "The will come," They always come. You should know what you have invited by helping us. Let them come, squeezed the alien's hand softly. Earth has never turned away people in need before. We are not going to start now. That night, as the refugees rested in temporary shelters on the orbital stations, stood at a window and looked down at the blue and white sphere of Earth. Somewhere out there in the darkness between stars, an empire of conquerors was hunting for the survivors she had just promised to protect. She did not know if humanity was ready for what was coming. She did not know if their ships and weapons could stand against a force that had burned an entire planet to ash. But she knew that turning away helpless refugees because of fear was not something humans did. She hoped that would be enough. Behind her, Marsh approached with a tablet in his hands. "Commander, long-range sensors are picking up something strange. Hyperspace fluctuations about 6 light-years out. Something big is moving in our direction." Did not take her eyes off Earth. How long until they get here? At their current speed, maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to convince the world that an alien armada was about to knock on their door. 3 weeks to turn a planet of 7 billion people into a fortress. "Then we better get started," she said quietly. "Wake up the Admiral, wake up everyone. They are coming, and we are going to give them a welcome they will never forget." 3 weeks passed faster than anyone expected. The orbital stations became crowded cities as refugees settled into temporary housing, while human engineers worked around the clock to repair their damaged ships. Dr. Samuel Grant spent most of his time in a makeshift laboratory where he studied biology and tried to understand how to treat their injuries better. The more he learned, the more he understood why humans were feared across the galaxy. "This is remarkable," he said to Commander during one of her visits. "They come from a world with about 60% of Earth's gravity. Their atmosphere is thinner and has less oxygen. The temperature range on their planet was maybe 15 degrees from coldest to warmest." Crossed her arms. "So compared to them, we live in a nightmare." "Exactly. Earth has crushing gravity by their standards. Our air would slowly poison most galactic species. Our temperature swings would freeze or cook them depending on the season. And I have not even mentioned the predators, the diseases, the natural disasters, or the fact that we evolved from persistent hunters who could chase prey for days without stopping." A young scientist named had been assigned to work with Grant on technology exchange. She listened to his explanation and nodded her thin head slowly. "Your world is classified as a Category 7 in galactic records," said. "The scale only goes to 10. Category 10 worlds are actively hostile to all known forms of life. Your world is merely considered extremely likely to kill any visitor within hours of landing." Almost laughed, "And yet you came here anyway." "We were desperate," admitted. "They have conquered hundreds of worlds. No one has ever stopped them. When my people searched for somewhere to run, someone remembered the old stories about the at the edge of the galaxy. We thought if they were real, maybe they could fight maybe they could do what no one else has ever done." Looked at the young scientist with something close to pity. They had crossed the galaxy on a hope and a prayer. They had bet everything on legends and rumors. She hoped they had not bet wrong. Captain Torres commanded the warship Endurance, one of the largest vessels in Earth's fleet. She spent the 3 weeks drilling her crew for the battle she knew was coming. Her ship had been built for defense and patrol, not for standing against an empire that burned planets for fun. But she would make it work or die trying. Colonel Daniel Hayes organized the ground forces that would defend Earth if they managed to land troops. He set up defense positions in every major city and trained civilians in basic emergency procedures. The world had never faced an alien invasion before, but Hayes treated it like any other military problem. Identify the threat, prepare the defenses, trust your people. They shared everything they knew about the enemy used massive warships with powerful energy weapons. They attacked in overwhelming numbers and showed no mercy. They took slaves from conquered worlds and worked them to death in mines and factories. Any species that resisted was exterminated completely. Showed footage of the attack on her. The images were blurry and shaky, recorded by someone running for their life. Watched as enormous vessels filled the sky and rained fire down on cities that had stood for thousands of years. She watched as families tried to flee and were cut down by the hundreds. She watched as voice on the recording screamed for her parents while the world burned around her. "I am sorry," said when the footage ended. Wiped her eyes with a thin hand. "Do not be sorry, be ready. They will do the same thing to your world if you cannot stop them. The night before they were expected to arrive, Admiral Perry addressed the entire planet through a global broadcast. He explained the situation calmly and clearly. An alien empire was coming to destroy the refugees Earth had taken in. The choice was simple. Humanity could surrender and hope they would leave them alone, or they could fight. We know what happens to species that surrender Perry said. Slavery, extinction, the slow death of everything that makes a people who they are. Some might say we should not risk our world for strangers. Some might say this is not our fight. But I say that the moment we took in those refugees, we made it our fight. The moment we promised to protect them, we made a promise that humanity does not break. The response was not unanimous. Some people protested. Some demanded that Earth turn the over and avoid the coming war. But the majority stood with Perry. The majority understood that some things were worth fighting for even when the odds looked impossible. Lieutenant Marsh tracked the fleet as it approached. 200 warships, each one larger than anything in Earth's navy. They moved through space like a swarm of predators closing in on wounded prey. Commander stood on the bridge of Luna Base and watched the sensor display with calm eyes. Beside her, Aura trembled with fear. "They are here," the elder speaker whispered. "They found us. They always find us." Put a hand on the alien's shoulder. "This time will be different." "How can you be so sure?" Smiled without warmth. "Because this time they are not chasing helpless refugees. This time they are walking into the home of 8 billion who have spent 3 weeks preparing a welcome party." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Their flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons, immediately began broadcasting a message. "Primitive species of this world, we are the dominion of. You are harboring criminals and fugitives who belong to us. Surrender them now, and we may allow you to live as our servants. Refuse, and we will burn your world to ash as we have burned so many others." Perry responded from Geneva while the fleet formed up around Earth. "This is Admiral George Perry of United Earth Defense Command. The people you are hunting have asked for our protection and we have given it. They are not criminals. They are refugees, and you will not touch them." The commander laughed. The sound crackled through the speakers like breaking glass. "You are fools. You do not know what you face." Perry leaned forward in his chair. "Neither do you. I suggest you turn around and go home while you still can." The laughter stopped. The channel went silent for a long moment. Then the fleet began to move toward Earth. "Watch them come." Her heart pounded in her chest, but her hands were steady. Behind her, crews rushed to their stations. Ships powered up their weapons. Fighters launched from orbital platforms. The war for Earth was about to begin. The first shots of the battle lit up the darkness between Earth and Mars. Energy beams sliced through space, while human missiles and rounds answered in kind. The two fleets crashed into each other like waves breaking against rocks. Captain Torres gripped the arms of her command chair as the Endurance shuddered from a near miss. Her ship was one of 40 human vessels facing 200 warships. The math did not favor them, but Torres had never been good at math anyway. "All batteries, target the cruiser at bearing 027, she ordered. "Hit them with everything we have." The Endurance unleashed a barrage that would have torn any human ship apart. The cruiser absorbed the first volley with its shields, but the second volley punched through. Explosions rippled across the enemy vessel as atmosphere vented into space. "Direct hits," her weapons officer reported. "Their shields are down." "Finish them." The third volley turned the cruiser into an expanding cloud of debris. Torres allowed herself a small smile before turning her attention to the next target. One down, 199 to go. Lieutenant Amy Porter flew a fighter through the chaos of the battle. Her squadron, 12 pilots who called themselves the Eagles, weaved between the massive warships and struck at vulnerable points. Point defense weapons tried to track them, but human fighters were smaller and faster than anything the aliens had faced before. "Eagle 3, watch your 6, Porter called out as she pulled her fighter into a tight turn. Her wingman responded by dropping below a beam that would have cut him in half. He came up firing, and his shots tore through the weapon emplacement that had nearly killed him. "Thanks for the warning, lead." Porter pushed her throttle forward and led her squadron toward a cluster of cruisers that were trying to flank the human fleet. The fighters screamed through the enemy formation and left burning ships in their wake. They had never seen anything move so fast or hit so hard. On the bridge of his flagship, Warlord X watched the battle with growing confusion. His fleet outnumbered the defenders 5-1. His ships were larger and more powerful. Victory should have been quick and easy. Instead, his cruisers were burning. His fighters were being torn apart by impossible maneuvers. His sensors showed human ships taking damage that should have killed them, and then continuing to fight anyway. "What is wrong with these creatures?" he demanded. His tactical officer studied the data with wide eyes. "Warlord, they are not responding to damage the way other species do. Their ships are designed with redundant systems. When we destroy one section, they simply transfer power from another. And their smaller craft are performing maneuvers that would kill pilots of any other species." "Explain." "The acceleration forces they are enduring would crush, or any other known species. Their bodies are somehow surviving conditions that should internal organs." X slammed his fist against his throne. "They are primitives from a backwater world. How are they doing this?" No one could answer him. The battle raged for hours. Earth's fleet took heavy losses, but they made the pay for every ship they destroyed. The orbital defense platforms added their firepower to the fight, raining missiles and energy beams on any enemy vessel that came within range. Then they changed tactics. Instead of trying to break through the fleet, they sent boarding parties to the orbital stations where the refugees were sheltered. Sergeant Cole was waiting for them. His Marine squad had been stationed on orbital platform 7 since the refugees arrived. They had trained for this moment. They had prepared for close combat against an enemy that no human had ever faced before. The breaching pods slammed into the station hull and began cutting through. Cole and his team took positions behind cover and waited. "Remember your training," Cole said quietly. "Short bursts, aim for center mass, and if they get close, use your blades." The hull section fell inward, and soldiers poured through the breach. They were tall and heavily armored with 4 arms that each held a weapon. They moved with the confidence of warriors who had conquered 100 worlds. That confidence lasted about 3 seconds. Cole opened fire and his squad followed. Human weapons designed for high-gravity combat tore through armor like it was made of paper. The aliens stumbled and fell, shocked by the force of the impacts. The survivors pushed forward, expecting the humans to retreat like every other species did when faced with aggression. Instead, Cole's squad held their ground and kept firing. When they finally reached them, the Marines switched to close combat. They were larger and had more limbs. The humans were stronger, faster, and had been fighting each other for their entire evolutionary history. Cole drove his combat knife through a soldier's throat and kicked the body aside without slowing down. His squad carved through the boarding party with brutal efficiency. Commander heard about the boarding action while directing the defense from Luna Base. She grabbed a weapon and headed for the docking bay where her own shuttle waited. "Commander, where are you going?" Marsh called after her. "Platform 3 is reporting inside their refugee section. I am going to help." "You are the commanding officer. You cannot just leave." Stopped and looked back at him. "Those refugees came to us for protection. I promised them we would not abandon them. I am not going to break that promise." She flew through the battle in a shuttle that was never designed for combat. Debris bounced off her hull and near misses rocked the small craft, but she made it to Platform 3 and docked at an emergency airlock. The interior of the station was chaos. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the corridors. Refugees huddled in corners while soldiers hunted them through the damaged sections. Moved through the station with her weapon raised. She found a group cornering a cluster of children and their caretakers. The aliens were laughing, enjoying the terror of their victims. They stopped laughing when opened fire. She killed 3 of them before they even knew she was there. The 4th turned and raised his weapon, but she was already moving. That was bigger and stronger, but had grown up on a world where everything was trying to kill you. She had reflexes that made the alien seem slow and clumsy. She put 2 rounds through his chest and 1 through his head for good measure. The children stared at her with huge dark eyes. Their caretaker, an elderly female, pressed her hands together in a gesture of gratitude. "Come with me," said. "I am getting you out of here." She led them through the burning station, fighting off 2 more patrols along the way. By the time she reached the evacuation shuttles, she had taken a wound to her left arm that would have put most species into shock. She barely noticed it. Back in the main battle, they were beginning to falter. They had expected easy prey. Instead, they had found something that fought back with a ferocity they had never encountered. Their losses were mounting. Their confidence was cracking, and the battle was only getting started. Warlord X stood on the bridge of his flagship and tried to understand what was happening to his fleet. The battle had been raging for 12 hours. His armada had destroyed 15 human ships and damaged many more. By every measure of warfare he knew, he should be winning. But his fleet had lost 50 warships, 50 vessels crewed by the finest warriors of the Dominion, torn apart by primitives who should not have been able to scratch his paint. "This is impossible," he muttered. His intelligence officer approached with a data tablet in his shaking hands. "Warlord, I have been analyzing I believe I understand what we are facing." "Then explain it to me. Explain how a species that has never left their own solar system is destroying my fleet." The officer swallowed hard. "There is a Category 7. Every aspect of their evolution has been shaped by constant danger. Their gravity is crushing. Their atmosphere is corrosive. Their climate swings between extremes that would kill any of us within hours. I know all of this. It does not explain how they fight." "But it does, Warlord. They did not evolve intelligence despite these conditions. They evolved intelligence because of them. Their bodies are designed to survive damage that would kill us. They can continue functioning even when badly wounded. They ignore pain that would render us helpless." X stared at the display showing the ongoing battle. Human ships were taking hit after hit and refusing to die. Their crews were fighting through damage that should have killed them 10 times over. "They are not just resilient," the officer continued. "They are also persistent predators. On their world they would chase prey for days without rest. They would track wounded animals until the creatures simply collapsed from exhaustion. They are built to endure, to recover, and to never stop coming." "Are you telling me that we cannot beat them?" "I am telling you that we have never faced anything like them. They fled to this world because they hoped that would protect them. They were right to hope." The battle continued to turn against the Captain Torres, and the Endurance had taken severe damage but remained in the fight. Torres had lost an eye to a console explosion, and she commanded her ship with blood running down her face. "All hands damage report," she ordered. Her executive officer ran through the list. "Hull breaches on 6 decks, weapon systems at 40%, engines damaged but functional, nearly a third of the crew dead or wounded." "We can still fight," Torres said. "It was not a question." "Yes, Captain, we can still fight." "Then find me a target." The Endurance turned toward a battle cruiser that was trying to break through to the refugee stations. Torres ordered a ramming course. Her crew did not hesitate. The vessel tried to evade, but the Endurance was faster than it looked. Torres aimed for the enemy's engine section and pushed her damaged ship to maximum speed. "All hands brace for impact." The two ships collided with a force that shattered armor and killed hundreds on both sides. The battle cruiser broke apart, its reactor going critical and consuming the wreckage in a ball of fire. The Endurance tumbled away from the explosion, venting atmosphere and trailing debris. Torres hung from her command chair, barely conscious, and watched her damage control teams fight to keep the ship alive. "Status," she croaked. "We are still here, Captain." Torres laughed. It hurt, but she laughed anyway. "Then we are still in the fight." On the surface of the moon, ground-based weapon platforms opened fire for the first time. Massive that had been built in secret over the past 3 weeks hurled projectiles at the fleet with devastating accuracy. Mars orbital stations joined the attack, adding their firepower to the defense. Dr. Grant had spent the battle analyzing ship designs using data from destroyed vessels. They found a weakness in the enemy's reactor shielding. A precise hit at the right angle could trigger a cascade failure. The information went out to every human ship and weapon platform. Suddenly, they were dying faster. Their reactors exploded without warning. Their shields failed at critical moments. The Dominion armada that had never known defeat was learning what it felt like to lose. Admiral Perry watched the battle from Geneva and made a decision he had hoped to avoid. "Launch the volunteer fleet," he ordered. The volunteer fleet was a collection of older ships that had been retired from active service. Their crews were men and women who had stepped forward knowing they would not come back. They were old veterans and young idealists, people who had decided that some things were worth dying for. 37 ships launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system. They were not as fast or as powerful as the main fleet, but they hit them from directions the aliens did not expect. The Dominion formation shattered as the volunteer fleet tore through their ranks. Commander watched the battle from a medical station where doctors were treating her wounded arm. She had refused to rest until she knew the refugees were safe. The orbital platforms had been evacuated to emergency shelters deeper in Earth's gravity well, where they could not easily reach them. Aura sat beside her, watching the same tactical display. The elder speaker had aged visibly over the past day. The stress of watching another battle for survival was taking its toll. "Your people are dying for mine," Aura said quietly. Nodded yes. "Why? You did not know us before we arrived. We brought this war to your door. You could have turned us away and saved yourselves." Thought about the question for a long moment. Because we have been refugees too. Throughout our history, there have always been people running from those who wanted to destroy them. Sometimes the world turned them away. Sometimes it welcomed them. The times we welcome them are the moments we are proud of. The times we turn them away are the moments we try to forget. She looked at the display showing the volunteer fleet making its final charge into the formation. Lights blinked out one by one as ships were destroyed, but they took enemy vessels with them. Those people out there are fighting because they believe protecting the helpless is more important than their own lives. That is who we are. That is who we choose to be. Aura's large dark eyes filled with tears. We came hopping for salvation. We never imagined we would find this. On his flagship, Warlord X watched his fleet die around him. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt something he had never experienced before. He felt afraid. They were not just fighting to defend their world. They were fighting with a fury that made no sense. They threw themselves at his ships without hesitation. They took wounds that should have killed them and kept coming. They burned and bled and died, and still they refused to stop. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had crushed empires and enslaved billions. He had never met a species that would not eventually break. These creatures would not break. He could see that now. He could destroy their fleet, bomb their cities, burn their world to ash, and the survivors would still crawl from the wreckage to fight with their bare hands. For the first time in his life, X understood that some prey should never be hunted. But it was too late to turn back now. The final phase of the battle began with 90 ships facing 15 human vessels that could still fight. The orbital platforms were damaged and running low on ammunition. The ground-based weapons on the Moon and Mars had overheated from constant firing. By every logical calculation, they should still win. Warlord X ordered his remaining fleet to form up for a final assault. He would crush them through sheer weight of numbers. He would burn their world and salt the ashes. He would make an example of them that the galaxy would remember for 1,000 years. Commander broadcast a message to every human ship, station, and ground installation that could still receive it. Her voice was calm and steady despite the exhaustion that dragged at her bones. "This is Commander of Luna Base. I know we have lost friends today. I know we are tired and wounded, but look at what we have done. We have faced an empire that has never been defeated, and we have made them bleed. We have shown the galaxy that protect their own." She paused and looked at the display showing the incoming fleet. "Those refugees came to us because they had nowhere else to go. They believed in us when they had no reason to believe in anything. Today we prove that their faith was not misplaced. Today we show the universe what humanity does when someone threatens the people under our protection." She took a deep breath. "All ships, all stations, prepare for final engagement. Make them remember this day." The response came from across the solar system. Ships that were barely holding together reported ready. Stations with skeleton crews reported ready. Ground installations with melted barrels and cracked foundations reported ready. Humanity was not going to go quietly. Then something unexpected happened. The ships, the 17 damaged vessels that had brought the refugees to Earth, began to move. They had spent the battle hiding in Earth's shadow, too broken to fight. Now they formed up alongside the human fleet. Aura's voice came over the command channel. "You have given us everything. You have bled and died for people you did not know. We cannot watch any longer. Our ships are damaged, but they can still fly. They can still fight. Let us stand with you." Felt something tighten in her chest. "Aura, your people have suffered enough. You do not need to do this." "We need to do exactly this. We ran from the once. We will not run again. Today we stand with the. Today we find our courage." The combined fleet moved to intercept the assault. 17 ships joined 15 human vessels against 90 warships. The numbers still favored the Dominion, but the odds had improved. Lieutenant Porter led what remained of Eagle's squadron toward the flagship. She had lost 8 of her 12 pilots over the course of the battle. The 4 survivors flew with the same fierce determination that had carried them this far. Eagles, this is lead. We are going for the flagship. If we can take out X, their command structure falls apart. Lead, that ship has more point defense than the rest of their fleet combined. We will never make it through. Porter smiled inside her helmet. Watch me. She pushed her fighter to speeds that would have killed pilots from any other species. The acceleration crushed her into her seat, but her body, built on a, could handle forces that would rupture alien organs. She weaved through energy beams and missile barrages, leaving burning point defense turrets in her wake. Her squadron followed. 2 more pilots died in the approach, but Porter and 1 wingman made it through to the flagship's hull. Eagles, I am going for the bridge. Cover me. She lined up her attack run and felt a strange peace settle over her. She had always known she would die in a cockpit. She had made her peace with that truth long ago. At least her death would mean something. Porter fired everything she had at the flagship's bridge. Her weapons tore through armor and shields and shattered the command center in a ball of fire. Warlord X died without ever understanding what had happened. Porter tried to pull away, but a secondary explosion caught her fighter. Her last thought was of Earth, blue and beautiful, hanging in the darkness behind her. With X dead, the Dominion chain of command collapsed. The remaining ships received no orders, no coordination. They began to break apart as individual captains made different decisions. Some tried to continue the assault. Some tried to flee. Some simply stopped, paralyzed by confusion. Colonel Hayes led ground forces in capturing a cruiser that crashed on the moon after losing its command crew to a hull breach. It was the first time anyone had ever taken prisoners. The aliens stared at their human captors with something that looked like awe mixed with terror. Captain Torres brought the crippled Endurance back into the fight one final time. Her ship could barely maneuver and had only a handful of weapons still functioning, but she positioned it to block a destroyer from reaching an evacuation transport full of children. You want them, she broadcast to the enemy ship. Come through me. The destroyer tried. The Endurance held. By the time the battle ended, only 12 ships remained operational. They fled toward the edge of the solar system, jumping to hyperspace as soon as they could. They left behind the wreckage of 188 warships and the bodies of hundreds of thousands of warriors. Earth had won. The cost was staggering. 25 human ships destroyed, 3 orbital stations shattered, cities damaged by debris that fell through the atmosphere, millions dead, including the volunteer fleet that had given their lives to turn the tide. But the refugees were safe. They had been stopped, and the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. A month after the battle, Commander stood at a memorial being built on the moon. The names of everyone who had died in the defense of Earth were being carved into the black stone surface. The list seemed endless. Aura stood beside her, along with and dozens of others who had come to pay their respects. The Dominion Council is meeting, Aura said quietly. The survivors of X's fleet have reported what happened here. The other warlords are debating whether to send another armada. Kept her eyes on the memorial. Let them come. I do not think they will. The survivor reports have spread across the galaxy. Everyone knows what they did. Everyone knows that you fought an empire to protect refugees you had only just met. Stepped forward. Other species are already sending envoys to Earth. They want alliances, trade agreements, protection. You have shown them that they can be beaten. You have given the galaxy hope. Finally smiled. Then maybe all those people did not die for nothing. She looked up at Earth, visible through the observation dome. The planet was but rebuilding. Life was continuing. The people who had died had bought that future with their lives. Far away, in a cold chamber on a world that had never known warmth, a survivor stood before the Dominion Council. He was the highest-ranking officer to escape the disaster at Earth, and he had been summoned to explain what had happened. The council members were ancient and powerful, warlords who had conquered their own empires before uniting under the Dominion banner. They had never known defeat. They did not understand what this young officer was trying to tell them. You lost 188 ships to primitives, one of them demanded. The officer trembled but held his ground. They are not primitives, honored ones. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every moment of every day. They are stronger than us, faster than us, and they do not stop. They do not give up. They do not break. Every species breaks eventually. Not these. I watched their ships take damage that would destroy our vessels and continue fighting. I watched their soldiers take wounds that would kill our warriors and keep attacking. I watched them sacrifice themselves without hesitation to protect strangers they had only just met. He paused and forced himself to meet the eyes of the council. Do not go to their world. Do not threaten what they protect. The humans are not just survivors of a death world. They are reckoning, and if you send another fleet, none of us will come back. The council chamber fell silent. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy through fear for 10,000 years. Now, for the first time, they understood what it felt like to be the ones who were afraid. And somewhere on Earth, survivors looked up at the stars and prepared for whatever came next, knowing that they had proven something important to themselves and to the universe. Humanity protects its own. Always.